Good evening and thank you for coming to this Future Libraries event. My name is Steve Dearden. I'm the director of the Writing Squad, which is based in Stockport but works with writers all over the north of England. I'll introduce the project and then hand over to Irini from Future Everything to introduce the artists and the format for this evening. The purpose of Manchester Libraries Festival, which is supported by Arts Council England, is to celebrate not just public libraries, but all libraries. And not just libraries as institutions and collections, but as people and places. Places where we feel comfortable to go for the reasons we want to be there. Not just to find texts, books, information and stories, but to find ourselves. The Libraries Festival celebrates the people who all day, every day, put us in touch with what we are looking for. Not only in their own collections, but as always, this isn't just a new thing with the digital world, as always, to connect us to all collections everywhere. People who are ready to answer the same question again and again, but also to be surprised by the oddest and most obscure request, whose massive underestimated skill is not necessarily to know everything, but to know how to find everything out. We're hugely lucky to be a city of literature, and in Ivan, Reese and Joe have a team who know that the key to being a successful city of literature is not to reinvent, but to bring together and maximise the importance of what's there. And this project has been a perfect example of this, pairing Writing Squad writers and creative technologists to work with the squad and Future Everything to, in an insanely small amount of time, work together to explore or at least bring us to consider the question, what might libraries of the future look like? Irini.
Thank you, Steve, and warm welcome from me as well. And just to say that at Future Everything, we are delighted to be part of this super interesting project. And just to mention briefly what is happening tonight, we have the three pairs who have been collaborating towards these commissions. So we will be hearing from them, followed by a discussion. And of course, everyone from our audience will have a chance to post their questions as well. So please feel free to use the Q&A or the chat here. You can see the signs at the bottom of the screen. Please feel free to post your questions throughout the evening. And and I would like, without further ado, to briefly mention our pairs for tonight. So we've got writer Ruth Yates with creative technologist Chris Ball, artist and creative technologist Izzy Bolt working with writer and photographer Lydia Hounat, and last but definitely not least, poet Charlotte Wetton with artist and creative technologist David MacFarlane. So I would like to welcome first Ruth and Chris, who will be sharing their project.
Hi there. Hi there. So yes, I'll introduce myself first. I'm Chris Ball, creative technologist. I generally work with artists to make their technical dreams come true in some capacity, but occasionally I'll do something a bit more creative like this. Ruth.
My name is Ruth. I'm a poet based in Sheffield and a former member of the Writing Squad. And it's the first time I've worked with a creative technologist, and I found it really interesting and enjoyable. So that project was commissioned by Festival of Libraries, as Steve and Irini have described. And we were commissioned to create a piece of artwork about the future of libraries in working with our partner library, Lee Library in Wigan Borough. And so we had to combine our kind of skills in writing and creative technology with that theme of the future of libraries. So to begin with, we had lots of kind of initial ideas that we were bouncing off each other, a lot of ideas. We had about 40 ideas we counted today, so many. And we both really wanted to create something which really interactive with library users and with librarians, that really kind of getting people involved in the project. So one of the ideas we had, which we didn't do, was to, for example, to create like a sound garden or a sound walk where people would interact with kind of pieces of writing. And yeah, Chris is going to kind of describe some of the other ideas we had.
Oh yeah, in early meetings, we just were throwing stuff against the wall. But yeah, I've got written down phonetic Lego was one of the things I was really interested in doing, because Ruth has a bit of a background in speech therapy. So that would have been like building words out of phonemes that are Lego, which I was quite interested in. But ultimately, we decided we were really interested in involving the public and involving the librarians, the people of that space, in our project very deeply. So that leads me to our first slides, I believe. So let me just share my screen a moment. Okay. So this is, oh no, okay, excuse me a moment. We've skipped ahead loads of slides. There we go. So this is the Turnpike Centre. This is where Lee Library and the Turnpike Gallery are located. And this is where we're basing our project. So Ruth, did you want to introduce the library and librarians?
Yeah. So we work with some really fantastic librarians, both in the Turnpike kind of Arts Centre and in the library. So including kind of Debbie, Kath, Library Transformation Officer, other librarians, and people from upstairs from the Turnpike Centre. And so although we had all these original ideas, we kind of worked with the librarians to see what they wanted. Because this year they're celebrating their 50th anniversary of the building, they were really keen to kind of link that to their own project, which is about the past 50 years of the Turnpike and the future 50 years. And of course, ours is about the idea of future libraries. So we kind of worded our project in terms of the next 50 years to sort of link more with their own projects. So we had two different strands of our project that we ended up doing. We had a community strand where we kind of asked members of the public to submit their own ideas about the future of libraries. And we had a strand which was like a creative piece of work, which became a film poem, which is based more on librarians' ideas about future libraries.
So the community strand, yeah, taking public's ideas, the creative strand, taking the librarians' ideas and making them into a piece of creative work. So in order to get the public's ideas, we created these little postcards. So as you can see, we've tricked people into writing poetry here by giving them very, very strict limitations, like having just 20 words to express an idea. It forces you to crystallize what you're trying to say. At least that was the aim. Other reasons, we wanted to display these little bits of text on a display with very limited characters, and also a receipt printer. And we wanted to get lots of ideas across quickly, to have lots of people's ideas on there. So we kept everything very short. So I'll just quickly introduce the two parts, the two displays of the community strand, if you like. So this is an alphanumeric display. It's a bit like a train station notice board or something that I made myself, and that was put together and put up in the library. This is unfortunately, like, this is one of the best photos I have, so you'll just have to enjoy it, peeking behind the books there. So this would display the text that people wrote in for us. We'd pull it off the internet. We have a little online database and display it for her. Okay, so just a very quick video of that so you can get an idea of how it moves. This is during the setup. You might notice the little icon on the bottom right, which sort of links all the ideas together, because they okay. So trying to get to the next slide. Okay, and we've also made our own little receipt machine. We wanted people to be able to take away something as well as introduce them to the project. So these receipts would have some of the ideas of that people have about the future, and would also introduce them to the project, and also have a little excerpt from Ruth's work. So this machine was also connected to the internet. You push the big red button and you get a receipt, which looks something like this. Oh, or you get an error. Maybe we'll come back to that. And we'll just try that one more time. It's pretty much exactly what you're expecting, but yeah. So those receipts, I'll just skip on to the next one. just to have that introduction, as I mentioned, print out some text. It explains the project to people and gets lots more people involved, which is, we've had loads more responses since we put the machine out. Okay, so at the bottom of the receipt, we have an excerpt from Ruth's text that she's been working on, which she's probably going to talk a little bit about now.
Yeah, so yeah, at the bottom of the receipt, we had the text, which is kind of based on what librarians said, with a bit of kind of creative license as well. So basically, I really want to include librarians' ideas. So we interviewed the librarians at Lee Library, who kindly let us get them to help write my poem. So we asked them about their ideas of the future of libraries. So the same prompt that we gave to members of the public. And so what will a library be like in 50 years' time? And as part of the poem, I also kind of used the sort of different animals as metaphors to kind of explore different ways that librarians, what like things that librarians do, really. So it's called In Celebration of Librarians, and it includes quotes from ideas of the librarians. For example, the quote here, "The key is catching babies' imaginations." This is what one of the librarians said, you know, as part is a really key part of their job. So I included these quotes. I also took inspiration from Michael Rosen's book, We're Going on a Bear Hunt, and instead we're going on a library hunt looking for librarians. So this is a short part of the film poem that was the result. So I'll read it as it plays.
Or will you?
Yeah, if it will play, and if not, I can just read it.
The Google Slides video.
Yeah. So it's after Michael Rosen, and the lines in italics are quotes from librarians. So
we may have to skip this bit, Ruth.
That's fine. That's fine.
Yeah.
Can you go back to the previous?
Yeah, I can do. Yeah.
Okay. This is the beginning of it. So, librarians are a troop of kangaroos carrying our youngest into the future. Our children are librarians, the volunteers and borrowers of books, the custodians of our future libraries. The key is catching babies' imaginations. We're going on a library hunt. Hold on tight. And then we have this refrain, a bit like a bear hunt, and it's we're going on a library hunt, a library hunt, a library hunt. We're looking for librarians and we can't wait. And each stanza is sort of based on an animal. And I actually asked the librarians to help me write it as well by asking them, how do you think librarians are like kangaroos or like moles? And I had some beautiful responses which found their way into the poem, also in italics. For example, one person said, oh, you know what moles are like when they come out into the light. So just some lovely lines. So that was the kind of creative strand, our own creative strand of the project. And we're just going to finish with showing you a few of our favourite public responses. So we've had some brilliant responses from like really young children to kind of octogenarians and beyond, sort of telling us their idea about future libraries. This is one of them.
And my favourite is this one.
The library would be old and fall apart at the hinges.
But the ghosts.
And there'd be library ghosts would help get the books for the humans. So we had robots, library ghosts, everything.
Yeah. I think we're probably about out of time there. But yes,
yeah.
I'll pass on to the next pair. So this is Izzy and Lydia.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Ruth and Chris. This is brilliant, such an amazing project. And one thing that I should have mentioned earlier was that everyone here had only 6 weeks to develop their ideas, which was an extremely tight period of time. So it's amazing what everybody has achieved. So yeah, Izzy and Lydia, we're looking forward to hearing from you next. Thank you.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Thank you for coming.
Ruth, for that was really nice to hear about your projects.
Oh, I love listening to what children have written. They're so magical as well. So I think I should probably. Do you want to start, Izzy, or shall I start?
Yeah, I can start. So hi, my name's Izzy. I'm a digital artist based in Manchester. I work a lot with video and 3D, but more recently, I've been working a lot with software and software development. So I'm a software developer for my job. But I also have a background in social anthropology, and I do a lot of writing and sort of speculative writing. So that's where me and Lydia really cross over.
Yeah, I'm Lydia Hounat. I'm a British Algerian writer and photographer. My interests lie in Indigenous Immigrant communities in North Africa and looking at the links between poetry, art and intergenerational trauma, and anthropological research, which is a mutual background that myself and Izzy have in common, which I think really drove our idea, or it was the impulse behind our commission and what we came up with, which is a work in progress and it's in development. It's something that we want to continue working on in future and developing and seeing what possibilities arise from those initial thoughts. So we were thinking about the relationship between libraries and trust and transparency, and the desire to encourage mentality of fact-checking and looking at how books are brought into the library, how they come to be, how that information is dispersed, and how readers interact with that information. But it evolved from that idea. We wanted to invite the library's readership to sculpt the catalogue, and we were looking at different ways and how that could manifest. And we eventually turned to chatbots, as that seemed like a feasible thing that we could achieve within 6 weeks. I can tell you now it was a little bit harder than that. But we were looking at chatbots and the idea of sentient libraries, and that digital library assistants could essentially help readers to sculpt a library like catalogue, or they might actually have an agenda of their own which doesn't seem to aid the readership. So we were looking at the utopic and dystopian possibilities of chatbots, where that could take us,
and sort of how reliable these technologies might actually be, and what sort of technology could be behind it and what influences could be behind it. So for example, like Google with targeted ads, and how people sort of get their information from Google currently is this sort of mass resource of information, and how this will influence like what people actually read, and what they might look at as opposed to other sources of information. And this sort of technology might become more prevalent in libraries as well.
Yeah, so we came up with 2 chatbots, one of which is called Saucer and the other is Candy, and then we amalgamated the names together to Candy Saucer. So that's the name of the whole commission. And Saucer is designed to fact check books, or look at how the acquisition of books relates to their trust or their reliability, but also since the idea evolved from that, it's designed to essentially grab together different suggestions of books from the library's readership and then pull those interests together in terms of context. So in terms of our audience, we're interested in appealing to anybody. You know, you might be a teenager who's really into Kathy Cassidy and you're looking for more books that are on that, and so you know you might type in that book and then Saucer will end up finding these other books that correspond to your interests and create a context pool based on other people's suggestions that are similar to yours. We created a curated list of 5 books, which you can view on the website. And, you know, 2 of them were quite academic reportages, and then 3 of them were quite creative, interdisciplinary documentations of diversity in Manchester. So they were very different books, but we were able to pull them together in this very original way and look at how their contexts intersected, and then we applied the background information of how those books were acquired by the library, what context of time they were conceived in, and then we looked at uniting them together. So the idea of Saucer is essentially that it can direct you to further possibilities within a library catalogue and you know, whatever those suggestions are, they're localized from the library readership. The readers are the people that are putting those suggestions in. So the locus of where the library is situated, the library's locus is essentially its niche. The people are the library catalogue's niche. So Candy, on the other hand, in fact, Izzy, you probably are better to talk about Candy more than me.
Share the web page.
Yeah, I think that would be really good actually, and then people can see the difference between them. So what is, do you want to talk about Candy does on the flip side of Saucer, rather than actually expanding the readership's horizons?
Yeah, I'm just having a little bit of an issue with my, 1 second. So Candy is essentially a chatbot gone a bit rogue. Candy is a candy floss obsessed chatbot which has been programmed to direct the reader to all things candy floss, and it doesn't really have any interest in what the user would like to say and the user's suggestions. All it wants is for the user to look at candy floss. So let me see if I can share my screen. 1 second.
So the idea is that Candy, rather than listening to the readership's requests, it has its own agenda where it ejects lots of information that it is interested in to the reader, rather than the reader having the autonomy and power over navigating the library catalogue. And, you know, we chose Candy Floss because it's seemingly harmless, but the point is that in future, if there was a political party or, you know, somebody with an agenda that they wanted to use a chatbot to facilitate carrying out that agenda, essentially that could be very dangerous technology that could, you know, direct a readership away from, you know, broadening its horizons or its interests. It would, you know, not work towards the benefit or the benefits of expanding the library or the needs of its readers. So that's the kind. This is the dichotomy that we were working with, and we were thinking about the potentiality of how that might manifest. And chatbots were one angle in terms of looking at that.
Yeah, and I think as well, different technologies such as chatbots could be really like educational, even if they are just sort of mock chatbots that have this sort of agenda, and it could help people identify chatbot behaviours, and as these become more integrated into libraries and institutions, it's important for people to know about how these work and like the algorithms behind these, especially with AI programmed chatbots, which can tend to sometimes have a bit of a bias behind the AI, and really working to create non-biased AI algorithms in these sort of technologies. Yeah, that's really important as well, making more shared resources for libraries, digital shared resources such as public APIs for researchers to access, and have these in an available digital space for people, seeing as now, you know, we're in this sort of digital world, slowly integrating back into the physical after COVID-19. The library needs to lie beyond the library walls, and we need to make these spaces more accessible for people.
Which is certainly a part of, you know, the future of Candy Saucer. You know, we want to integrate translation, we want to integrate Braille, we want to perhaps make it into something physical. We might dispose of the idea of chatbots completely and use software instead. We want to integrate AI so that, you know, if we were to continue with chatbots, we'd probably want to integrate AI so it could learn from interactions with its users so that the conversations could expand. we also want, you know, librarians to have autonomy over the technology that's being used in libraries. We want librarians to be able to, you know, intersperse their own interests and work directly with, you know, businesses, presses that are immediately around Manchester. We looked at one of the books that's on the catalogue, the curated catalogue that Saucer has made. It's edited by Martin de Mello. It's Moss Side Stories. You know, that book was acquired from a standard supplier, which could have been Askew Holtz or Amazon or Waterstones, but actually, you know, it's by a press called Commonwood, which is based in Manchester. So encouraging librarians to work closely with immediate presses around them, rather than regurgitating the role of being a bookseller, where you know, it's a Waterstones that you can borrow for the night. It's about encouraging the localization and specialisms of librarians and their interests as much as the readership, and taking that into the future and using a chatbot or using a piece of software to facilitate opening up that information. So yeah.
Thank you so much, Lydia and Izzy. And yeah, you can head to the Central Library to meet the chatbots and have a conversation with them. And I just wanted to remind everyone to please post your questions to all our artists in the chat or the Q&A. And I would like to welcome next Charlotte and David to introduce their project. And yeah, well done, Izzy and Lydia.
Thanks, Irini. Great to hear more full explanation of the project, Lydia. Yes, my name's Charlotte Wetton. I'm a poet and PhD candidate, and I work with David MacFarlane, the creative technologist. I'll let him introduce himself in a minute. If I just say a bit about how we came to the ideas and some of the ideas that we were exploring in our commission. We were designated the Poetry Library to work with, which was hugely exciting for me as a poet. It's a brand new library. It is run by MMU, so it is a university library, but incredibly it is open to the public. So everybody in Manchester and beyond can get a library card and can go into the library when it opens and explore poets without having to fork out £10 and then find they don't like the poet after all. We've all been there. And they can just kind of run around this library and just explore poetry. And there's going to be events and stuff as well, and a kind of a real sort of community and local aspect to it as well. So we started off by visiting the library, which is opening soon, and we spoke to the staff there, including staff who were putting the collection together. So our experience was a bit different to the other pairs, in that the collection is sort of half finished, as it were. And we were speaking to people who were putting that together for the very first time, and it was fascinating to hear about the ways that they had done that and how collaborative that was. So, for example, getting in touch with literacy organisations and children's organisations, as well as kind of librarians. So we visited the library, and our first thoughts were around perhaps doing like a podcast or a soundscape sort of piece. And I knew when I went in that I really wanted to include something around Manchester's community languages, because there's been some kind of great celebrations of that in recent months and years, around celebrating that diversity. And I knew that was something the Poetry Library were keen to do as well. So I thought I ideally wanted to include that. And I also wanted to include in the fabric of the commission librarians' expertise as well, so that it, like Ruth was saying, around sort of crowdsourcing those ideas and making it kind of more interactive and integrated with people. And I sort of came from that from a similar perspective, in wanting to use librarian skills at how they would navigate a collection and how they would help a user to sort of showcase that skill set, which, as Steve said, is really undervalued. Like not that many people sort of really understand what it is librarian does. So I started off talking to people, putting the collection together, and then I did some kind of slightly more formal interviews with librarians, with Mandy Coe, the children's writer who's putting together the children's collection, with project management staff at the library, and with facilities staff who work in the building. So I was trying to get kind of a more well-rounded picture. And as I predicted, ideas of poems arose from those really fascinating conversations that I had with these brilliant people. And two themes came out really strongly for me. So I went into it fairly open-minded in terms of the future of libraries, or what themes were important, or what I would end up writing about. I just thought, I'm just going to talk to these people and see. And the two strong things that came out, and I wrote 2 poems for the commission. The first was about being self-taught, and the kind of the journey of discovery, because that was something that I am really looking forward to with the poetry library, is discovering lots of poets who I don't already know about. I'm not going to go in and necessarily ask for a name. I'm going to discover people I've never heard of, and that actually happened to me in the commission by talking to a librarian. That kind of journey of self-discovery, and I'm not an autodidact, I'm not self-taught, I've been through the sort of traditional school straight onto university system, but I spoke to people who were self-taught through this commission, and whose parents were self-taught, and who shared those stories with me as well, and I found that really both moving and exciting, that the sort of the freedom and the creativity and the kind of bonkersness of being self-taught, and how important libraries were in that process, both historically back to the 19th century, but still today. And I really wanted to celebrate that. So that was the genesis of one poem, Autodidact. And then the other poem came from the interviews with the librarians. And there was 2 things that stood out to me. One was this phrase, the reference interview, which I'd never heard before and sounded like really formal and weird. And I learned is part of the librarians' postgraduate training that they do. You have to have a degree to be a librarian. And one of the things they're taught is this reference interview, when you talk to the book borrower, the customer, the library user, and they've come in for a book, and they maybe say they're interested in a topic. And then you sort of delve a bit deeper as a librarian and discover what it is they're really after. And I found this kind of like magical, tiny conversation, like really, really inspiring. So I then had a second librarian interview, and I asked them more about this. And then I wrote the poem, The Librarian Conducts the Reference Interview, and I tried to make it quite fantastical. And at the same time, I was asking the librarians for recommendations of poets, so poems about libraries, poems about these themes that were coming out to me around navigating and helping people, being self-taught, all of these kind of themes. And so people, both librarians and also the project managers at the poetry library who were putting these collections together, were like throwing all these recommendations at me, which was fantastic. So I discovered new people. And then I've worked lines from other poets, including some of Manchester's community languages in the original script, into the poem. So how we've done that, I'll pass over to David to explain a bit more about the location situation of these poems, and how we've made this a bit of a trailer for the Poetry Library opening.
Hi, I'm David. I trained as a musician and was always interested in music technology, but somehow kind of the music bit seems to have dropped off recently as I do more stuff. So it's been quite odd for me doing this project, which seems to have no music involved yet. Who knows? We'll see where it goes. So the idea for this, the technology side of things, I had it in the bath. I remember it very clearly, and it's the kind of thing that it just came to me in like a couple of seconds. I was like, oh, what if the poem was in the shape of a person's body and it moved? And I was like, oh, that'll do, as an idea. And so I picked it to Charlotte the next day, and she was on board, so we thought we'd run with it. I think actually the idea for it, my uncle got me for my birthday last month, this is a bit of a tangent, a t-shirt with the bit in The Shining where the main character writes, all work and no play, and it's Jack a dull boy. And it's just that written over and over and over and over and over again in really like weird typography. So I think somehow that sunk into my head and became the ideas for our technology. So we've got 2 installations. We were meant to have it in the poetry library, but as I looked into how we would actually realize the idea that I had, I realized we would need to use an infrared camera, which tracks people's position in space in 3D using infrared. Sends out the infrared, like how bats work, and then it bounces the infrared back and measures the distance. And the idea was to have that through the window of the new poetry office, because it looks right onto Oxford Road, which I'm told is the busiest bus route in Europe, which is quite the accolade. And the idea would be that people walking past would just see the poem written in the shape of their body. So I'll maybe just show you what that looks like before I talk more. So when you first look at the screen, which has the poem on, the thing that you see is a load of words floating around like this, which are the words to chart. As you move in front of it, like Haley's doing here, the words will rearrange themselves into whatever shape you make your body to, like this. And if you stand still, the words will settle and arrange themselves into, do I do that here? Yes, into the poem in a way you can read it because it's static. So we were going to do that in the poetry library, but it turned out that the windows were too thick. You've got some kind of weird tint on them. The infrared couldn't go through it. It couldn't see through the window. So we decided, well, we thought, oh no, what do? We need a backup plan. And we came up with the idea for the second poem, which is kind of on similar themes, but works a bit differently. So let's have a look at that actually. So this second poem with me and Charlotte today, doing some cheesy grins. So what this does is similar. It tracks people walking past and people skating past, flying past, and tram going past. And as people move, it looks for that movement, and that pushes the lines of the poem backwards and forwards. And that again was going to go on the Oxford Road Poetry Library site and look through the window, and as buses go past it, would push the line. And that was all working great. We were like, fantastic, we've got this one, we've got the other one, we've got two ready to go. Great. And then, well, what happened this week? On the Tuesday when we went to install, we put the screen up in the window in the poetry library, and you couldn't see through the window at all because it was too shiny. You just saw the street again, which kind of defeated the object of the project. So that day we went to Central Library in the morning and sat up there at the window, and then took ages there. Went to the poetry library, sat up there, realized that you couldn't see any of the installation. And we were like, oh no. Went back to Central, kind of begged them to let us put that one up there as well. So that's where they both are now. On St. Peter's Square, there's one facing the tram, one facing the War Memorial, and yeah, we got there in the end. Yeah, and I would love to develop this further. We talked to the Poetry Library about maybe having it there live in the space when it opens, which is going to be fab. I think it's much better not through a window. Yeah, I'll stop there.
Great, thank you so much, both. That's brilliant work, and yeah, highly recommend to everyone to go and check out everybody's beautiful artworks, and well done again for making this happen and putting it together in such a short time as well. So can I ask everyone to come back, like to put their screens back so we can move to our conversation. And yeah, everyone, please feel free to post your questions. But we've got, in the meantime, some questions for the artists. And if I can start with maybe just asking first of all, like, what do libraries mean to you, and what excited you about, you know, being part of this project in terms of like, working in the context of libraries? Who wants to go first? Shall we start with Chris and Ruth?
Yeah, for me, I hadn't actually been in a library for a very long time before this project, to the extent that I was slightly out of touch with what they delivered. When I think Ruth asked me what the future library like, I was like, oh, I imagine it to be really online, like just all the catalog is online. And then Ruth was like, they've already got that. They do that already. So
ebooks and the audiobooks, yeah.
But yeah, like reconnecting with that kind of community space, like that was great, because Lee has a really, really active library, like much more active than I have visited libraries to do workshops, but like not to like be in that space. And it was the most active library I've been in possibly ever. Like there's always people in there using it and using the space. Yeah. Anyway, it was just a great space to visit, and the librarians there were brilliant as well.
Yeah, they were amazing. And yeah, I mean, Sheffield libraries, I think they're fantastic. They have so many events and things on. But at Lee, they even have like a registrar office for births and deaths, and they have a life centre where people can get advice about employment. So it's a real, and they've got the turnpike upstairs, which is like this arts and crafts centre. So it's a real, they've got so many things going on, and they have community groups that come in and use the space. Anyway, for me, I always used libraries a lot. When I was little, one of the things I remember is just our library was near the fish and chip shop and the swimming pool. So I just remember associating books with chlorine and salt and vinegar, basically. But yeah, I use libraries a lot in Sheffield. They're brilliant. During the pandemic, they've had loads of kind of online events, and I think Lee has done the same. And I lived abroad for some time in Bilbao, and I've always found libraries a kind of safe space to go to. You kind of know where you are with them. You can just go in any library in any city, and kind of just spend some time there if you're waiting for something, or not sure what you're doing, waiting for your brothers to turn up or something like that. They're just great places. So yeah, I'm really fond of libraries, and yeah, the amount of things that happen at Lee Library also was just incredible.
Great, thank you. Lydia, Izzy, do you want to share any thoughts on this?
Sure. When I wrote my application for this, I said that libraries were an exchange of exchanging and sharing of information and knowledge, but thinking about that now, that's kind of like quite a clinical way of looking at libraries. They're more than just that, and it was sort of prompted through conversations that I'd had with Ivan and Steve about how emotional it can be, actually, libraries, the relationship that we have with them. The library around the corner from me, they've known me since my mother was pregnant with me. I've grown up with those librarians and the librarians that I was at university with, and the librarians that have been working with us at Central Library with me and Izzy. The connections and the relationships that are forged when you are not only exchanging the trust and knowledge that you have over books, but simply taste and directing one another and assisting one another. It's more than just an exchange of knowledge. So I suppose in a way, libraries, and I've said this before, they're memories, they're kind of a family that you sculpt for yourself over time in different places. And it echoes kind of what Ruth was saying about how you can go into any library anywhere, and that space accommodates you. So there is the idea that a library is kind of carved out of yourself in many ways, or it carves something in you. It's much more than just the exchange. It's family in many ways, especially if you go there a lot.
Yeah, and I think although we're discussing like the future of libraries as being this like digital centered sort of, or what about chatbots, what about this sort of technology, I feel like humans are always going to be like at the heart of libraries and what goes on there, and like the community. And yeah, the community like makes those decisions and should be really at the heart of what libraries are about, not just the books, but yeah, word of mouth and exchanging those ideas, which yeah, I feel like was really missed during the pandemic. So it's nice to be able to go back again and be in these spaces.
Thank you. Charlotte, David?
Well, what's my relationship with libraries? I think that libraries are a lot of different things, and there are lots of different kinds of libraries. Some of them are very quiet and stuffy, but my favorite kind are the ones like Central Library, which seems to have everything you can do is kind of possible there. Like you can go there and just sit for a bit. You can go there and research whatever you want, and you've got the music library there, which I think is incredible because you can just go in there and be as loud as you like, which goes directly against the reputation of libraries. You can do it all for free, and I think that's one of the most amazing things about that building. There's barely any way you can go and just exist for a while for free, and it's calm, and the whole building is centered around you just kind of growing as a person, really, I suppose. You can just go in there and practice the piano, or read your favorite author, or do your taxes, or apply for a passport, And I love that it's connected to the town hall as well, because it's kind of at the centre of what Manchester is there. And I think that's brilliant. So yeah, despite the poetry library that not being possible at the moment, yeah, it was a real joy to actually have something in there, because I think it is one of the greatest buildings in Google. Charlotte?
Yeah, I really respond to what everyone said about the space and it being like a safe space and somewhere that's really flexible for you. So you can pop in for 10 minutes or you can spend all day there. You can literally turn up when it opens and leave when it closes at 6 or 7 or whatever time that is. There's not many places that welcome you for that long, not without spending any money. So I think being able to go any city in the UK, I'd feel comfortable going, and like Ruth said, abroad as well. So I think that safety, and I hadn't appreciated until I'd done these interviews with the librarians how deliberate that is and how they actually work to create that. So one of the quotes I wanted to put in the poems that didn't quite make the final edits was that librarians said, we're non-judgmental, it's part of our training. And I was like, I'd never really thought of librarians that way. But actually part of that postgraduate qualification they do is around like not judging requests and being really open-minded to requests and kind of trying to relate to the person, like whatever they're asking for. So that definitely, but I think the overriding thing for me is the discovery, and that because a library is free, you take risks. And actually when you're paying per item, so with a, you know, on your Amazon Kindle, or if you're going to see a film at the cinema, you pay per thing, and so you're quite cautious in that money of what you're going to spend that tenner on. And I tend to only buy books I know I'm going to like, because I'm probably going to keep them. So I'm just going to buy something that, yeah, I love this book. I don't want to get halfway through a book that I've spent £15 on and not want it. So for me, libraries are about discovering things, and we'll go in and I will take a risk, and I will borrow a book or read a book, or kind of like maybe access something that I wouldn't kind of bother to access at home because it's there, like microfiche or whatever, because it's like I can just do it and put it down again. It's kind of that risk taking in discovery and in self-development and in self-taught journey, that I think is so exciting about libraries, and I think will always deliver that.
And one of the good things about this project is that you had time to spend with librarians and talk to them about their jobs, and take them seriously, as you said, as outsiders. Other things, some of you mentioned this already, but other things that surprised you. What was the one thing that surprised you in talking to librarians or spending time in libraries during the gestation of this project? It's a bit like University Challenge, this. David, you're about to say something. Oh, Charlotte, yes, go on.
Sorry, just because I was trying not to come in again so soon, but for the poetry library, because it's a new library being put together, I was quite surprised at their opening when they're not finished. So the collection isn't complete, and they're cool with that. They're like, yep, we're opening, we're going to see what people want, take requests, and how collaborative it has been to put that collection together. Like that really blew my mind. So they've done a lot of like little projects with like community groups and like getting recommendations, discovering new poets, new types of spoken word, particularly they're building up a big collection of that. And then with the children's collection, it's going to be from babies onwards. They've used like other organizations to get recommendations, and Mandy was telling me about all these amazing emails she'd had about like the staff fighting over their favorite recommendation for children's poets. So I think that, yeah, how collaborative that process is, and how much it is the Manchester Poetry Library is responding to the community. Like one of the people interviewed said, you know, we're not just like getting our favorites off Amazon, like Lydia was saying, it's something different to that. And also that it's in the university, but it's not just for the university. So they were saying, because we called it a library, we had to make it public. So it's not just the MMU Poetry Centre, and they could have just had that behind closed doors with a student swipe card. It's the Manchester Poetry Library, so it's for everyone. I thought that was a really interesting discussion that they'd had.
I like that, this idea that a collection can be complete. I mean, presumably that will never happen. That's another great thing about libraries, that they're never going to finish collecting all this.
The thing
stuff.
is that poetry books are very thin, so you can have lots of them.
Anyone else? There are some questions from the...
I'd like to say something just about, we already talked a bit about how sort of vast amount of things that happen at libraries, and so one of the things that surprised me, I kind of knew it already in a way, but until you sort of see it in practice, it's quite remarkable, like the roles that librarians have. So we met, for example, library transformation officers who were kind of involved in kind of outreach projects and things like that. And one of the librarians, Kath, was saying how she took children on a bear hunt around the library, and like took these troops of kids and went all around the library on this bear hunt. And it's just the kind of the amount of things that librarians do. And during the pandemic as well, there's a kind of report about, I think it's called the Carnegie report about libraries during COVID, and how librarians have adapted their skills to kind of do online things, to do more like outreach stuff, and kind of really support people in communities. And I think that's incredible. And another thing that kind of surprised me was the sort of ideas that they had for the future. So one librarian talks about having like a mood pod where you step inside and you can kind of adjust the mood to be like a beach, and with air conditioning. And another person said, oh, maybe we'll have key fobs and we can let ourselves into libraries. But then another librarian was saying, well, you know, I've worked in libraries for 40 or 50 years and not that much has actually changed. So people still come in for the same reasons, and the atmosphere is the same. The good, you know, the sort of nice atmosphere. But the one thing that she said had changed was now they're a lot noisier. So, you know, you can talk, because it used to be that you couldn't talk, and now you can, as I think David was saying, play music and things like that. So just a few of those things were kind of things that I learned that I hadn't really known before.
I just forgot to say before, when I was testing the text of the poem, I didn't have the poem that Charlotte was writing because she was still writing it. So I was testing it using We're Going on a Bear Hunt by Michael Rosen, which I thought was funny, Ruth, that you used that as well.
Such a classic.
We've got a question in the chat which asks, most of you as artists work across disciplines, and how important was that to the creative partnerships, especially given that you had such a short time to pull something together?
Can I?
Yeah.
I don't think I would have anticipated just how much goes into these interfaces that are now being created, you know, chatbots. If it wasn't for Izzy, you know, the ideas that we talked about could not have manifested if it wasn't for Izzy. And likewise, the changing of the scripts for Candy Saucer, or, you know, new outlooks or perspectives on, you know, how the project could evolve. I don't think that if we weren't working across lots of disciplines, that would have been conceived, or if we would have been able to look upon these different things with that kind of clarity. You need to be working across lots of disciplines, and you need to pull your disciplines together, your knowledge, in order for the work to have its merit, to acquire its merit. And even, you know, there's things about Candy Saucer that we want to improve. We're displaying it as a work in progress. The only reason it would be able to progress is because of the fact that we can continue working in this cross-disciplinary style. It's necessary for the work to evolve and change over time. And so that projects can come to fruition by having all of these different focalizations and practices. That compounds the work's merit, it gives the work its merit.
Chris, if you look like you're about to say something.
No, I wasn't, but yeah, I will do. Yeah, I think it was necessary, but I think maybe it's not important, but I feel like having like some experience in admin helps. You know, getting a lot of stuff done, it really helps if you're familiar with your tools and whatever they are, like, and you have to just know them, whether that's, you know, sharing a screen on Zoom or soldering something or writing a really nice couplet, like, and I think between us, we've managed to like really, I don't know, we just managed to put something together I don't think we could have done otherwise if it wasn't, you know, the exact blend of skills we've got, especially in the time scale.
Yeah, I agree. yeah, definitely more than the sum of our parts as pairs. Like, yeah, in terms of bouncing ideas off each other, but also the realization there was so many things to do other than just writing and the huge realm of creative technology. There's so much, yeah.
Yeah, and everyone's skills like contributed so much to the project. I think there's like such a variation in each other's ideas, and I really think, yeah, like the researchers and writers have inspired all of us as creative technologists so much throughout the project.
I think it's really interesting to me how all you creative technologists are kind of producers as well. And I don't know if you found it easier in pairs to actually have that interaction with librarians, whether that was easy to go as twos than it would have been had you just been a sole artist working in that kind of environment. Irini, you were going to ask a question.
Yeah, we've got a question for that is addressed to Izzy and Lydia, and asking if the chatbots you've encountered before are more like Candy or Sorcerer, and what do you think they will be like in the future?
I think it depends which chatbot you're chatting to. I think the chatbots that I've encountered have tried to be more helpful, but they can just be really annoying. So maybe they are a bit more like Candy in a way. But yeah, I hope that people can program chatbots to make them more useful. And although it's a bit scary, like with some of this technology that it seems to pick up information about you, maybe that information can be used helpfully rather than maliciously in, targeted ad form or whatever.
Yeah, I thought that AI was such a dangerous game, and when Izzy was talking about the potential for integrating AI in future with these chatbots, I suddenly thought actually a Sorcerer could be something that's where that's really, really useful. The conversations right now, they're working off scripts, they're extremely limited, but the hope is that we can integrate other interfaces to make them less limited, that more suggestions will come in, the catalogue on Sorcerer will expand and grow, it will become more multiplicitous in nature. I think in future something like Candy will probably exist. It won't necessarily be what it is right now. It might not be there to encourage people to go and buy candy floss or look at plants that seem to look like candy floss. It might be something much more sinister. But I also think, that chatbots like Sorcerer have every possibility of existing as well, where they're there to encourage expanding knowledge, expanding on suggestions, nurturing people's tastes. Especially for researchers, who are looking for specific books, or something, where they've got their niche that they're working on, they need additional suggestions to nourish their bibliography. I think that that they both have a place in the future. Whether they will manifest in that specific way, that's up to, I think, that's up to the future still.
And we talked about, you spoke about like the libraries memory, and like computers have like an unlimited memory, so they should help when librarians can't quite think of an answer, so they should help to keep those records more consistent, especially with sources. If this information could all be held somewhere, it's just like consistent record keeping, and it will hopefully never get lost unless the database was somehow lost or something. So
thank you very much. Can I just, we're coming to the end of our time now, so I just want to ask quick 3 questions. One, how long will we be able to see these things in Lee Library?
I believe Lee Library is closed on Sunday, so up until Saturday.
And will it be there next week?
It will be there for part of Monday.
Okay, fine. And how long will
there will hopefully be a website up and running, which will hopefully kind of be a place to house all of the published responses and the film poem itself. So hopefully that will go beyond the project.
Brilliant. And there is the website for, can you put the URL for Candy Saucer in the chat? That'd be really good, because that'll be there forever. And how long will the screens be in Central Library?
They'll be there until Sunday night, and then after that, we're hoping they'll be inside the Poetry Library on Oxford Road when that opens at the end of June, fingers crossed.
Fantastic. So there's only a little more time. Sorry, David, yeah, you were going to say?
They're coming down on Monday afternoon, probably. So there's a little bit more time for that.
On Monday morning. Fantastic. Are they there during the night when the library's closed, or does someone switch them on and off?
They are there during the night, yes.
Brilliant. So you can go and dance drunkenly in front of them.
You want to.
So just as we're finding out, the festival's shortly about to come to a close, so I'm just going to highlight the fact that the UK Comics Laureate event is in Altrincham Library on Friday at 11 tomorrow. And there's Fake New, an event exploring how you read beyond the headlines, which is on tomorrow as well at 3 o'clock. That's a digital event, as is Guy Garvey, talking about how he's been inspired by libraries, which is on Saturday at 7 o'clock. And all the Inspired by Libraries talks, which have been given by Gary Young, Mike Gary and Shirley May, Stuart McConey and Michael Rosen, will be online. And the great thing is, if you just put Festival of Libraries into your browser, it's the first thing that comes up. So you get access to all of that there. So thank you very much to Irini, to Future Everything, to the Manchester City of Literature. All the libraries we've worked with have been really brilliant and receptive, and also to our artists and panelists tonight. Thank you all very much. And most of all, thank you to you for coming. Good night.